The mansion stood silent, draped in shadows, its chandeliers flickering like dying stars as distant thunder rattled the glass. In that silence a shot cracked, sharp and merciless, breaking the fragile stillness. Blood sprayed across marble, and Vincent Marino collapsed, his expensive silk shirt blossoming crimson as his phone slid from his hand. He whispered, "It's done. The king is dead," his voice trembling with finality. The screen glowed faintly as the message delivered, the soft buzz echoing in the cavernous room. Heavy footsteps retreated into darkness, leaving the air cold and thick with dread. The storm outside raged, lightning slicing across the windows, each flash illuminating the horror sprawled across the grand floor. Fear crawled through the mansion's halls, unseen but alive, as shadows shifted like predators waiting for their turn. The Empire's heart had been pierced, and the ripples of betrayal would soon flood the underworld. Nothing would remain untouched. The war had begun, and no one inside the Empire would ever feel safe again. The storm roared outside as the mansion's silence returned, broken only by the faint buzz of Vincent's phone, still glowing in his hand. Across the city, whispers began spreading. In dim bars, smoky backrooms, and hidden corridors, men who once trembled at Vincent's name now smirked with quiet greed. Dominic Rossi said, "The king has fallen. Now the vultures will feast." Fear tangled with ambition, and the streets bristled with tension. The Empire's lieutenants, each one hungry for power, stirred in their shadows. A delicate balance shattered, alliances crumbled, and the scent of betrayal hung thick in the rain-soaked night. The death of a king meant the birth of chaos, and every man with ambition sharpened his knife. News spread like wildfire, carried by hushed voices and encrypted phones, each word dripping with danger. In a hidden warehouse, dimly lit by flickering bulbs, Anthony Marino clenched his jaw, rage boiling behind cold eyes. He said, "Someone thinks they've killed a king, but they've only awakened a storm." His fists trembled as loyal soldiers gathered, their silence heavy with fear. Outside, the rain hammered steel roofs, echoing like drums of war. Anthony's grief twisted into fury, his mind already plotting vengeance. The streets would drown in blood before he surrendered his family's crown. In a dimly lit apartment overlooking the city skyline, Michael Carter stared out the rain-streaked window, cigarette burning between his fingers. "Once Vincent's trusted enforcer, now a man haunted by ghosts," he muttered. "The Empire is bleeding, and no one can stop it." His reflection flickered in the glass, hollow eyes betraying years of loyalty turned to ash. The city lights blurred like fading stars, and in the silence he felt the weight of betrayal pressing harder than the smoke filling his lungs. A storm raged outside, but inside, the war had already begun in his soul. Far from the city's chaos, in a candle-lit church cloaked in silence, Isabella Marino knelt at the altar, her rosary trembling in her hands. She whispered, "God, forgive them, for they know not the demons they've unleashed." Tears streaked her face, but her eyes burned with resolve. Though innocent of her family's sins, blood bound her to their fate. The flickering candles cast shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of betrayal and death. The Empire was crumbling, but faith was her last weapon, and prayer her only shield. In that sacred silence, a war cry was hidden beneath her sobs. In the dim backroom of a shuttered nightclub, the air reeked of stale smoke and betrayal. Anthony Marino slammed his fist against the table, rattling empty glasses. He said, "Vincent is gone, but his throne will not sit empty." His soldiers shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward Michael Carter, whose silence carried more weight than words. Michael exhaled smoke slowly, gaze locked on the floor, haunted by ghosts he couldn't name. Anthony's voice rose, "The final heist will restore order. We will show the city who still rule." Outside, the rain poured endlessly, the neon glow from the street leaking through blinds like blood against the walls. In that suffocating room, destiny was being forged, and every man inside knew it would be written in violence. The heist was whispered like a curse. Plans spread across the table, maps stained with cigarette ash, Cash counts scrawled in hurried ink. Dominic Rossi leaned forward, cigar glowing, his grin sharp as a blade. He said, "This job seals the future. One move, and the empire is ours." Michael's eyes narrowed, distrust coiling in his chest. The room vibrated with greed, every man blinded by visions of power. Anthony tapped the map, his voice heavy with command. "We strike the cartel's vault. No mistakes, no mercy." The silence that followed was a vow written in blood, though none of them yet understood that betrayal already lurked inside their circle. In the dead of night, Anthony's convoy rolled through rain-slick streets, headlights slicing fog. Michael rode shotgun, his jaw tight, watching shadows move in every alley. Anthony muttered, "Trust is a luxury. Fear is the currency." The words sank heavy, and Michael felt the weight of them settle like chains. Their destination loomed ahead, an abandoned warehouse serving as their base. Inside, crates of weapons lined the walls, the smell of oil and steel choking the air. Soldiers checked guns in silence, preparing for the heist as if for war. Outside, thunder cracked, and the city itself seemed to shiver. The warehouse echoed with the clatter of weapons and the hum of whispered fear. Michael's hands traced over the cold steel of a pistol, memories of past sins flickering in his mind. He muttered, "Every bullet writes a name on a grave." Anthony barked orders, pacing like a caged animal. Soldiers moved like machines, faces hardened, eyes hollow. Isabella Marino entered quietly, her presence a jarring contrast. Her rosary hung at her chest as she said, "This path only leads to ruin." Anthony snapped, "Stay out of it. This family is bound to blood." Silence smothered the room, but Isabella's tearful eyes cut deeper than steel. The plan was set, yet the air carried a scent of doom. Around the table, men leaned in, eyes hungry but wary. Anthony declared, "Tomorrow, the vault falls, and the city bows once again." Michael felt the words burn, a storm raging behind his calm exterior. Dominic chuckled low, cigar smoke curling like snakes around his face. He said, "Victory belongs to the ruthless." Shadows thickened in the room, every man weighed down by unspoken suspicion. Loyalty was a mask, and beneath it, knives were already drawn. The heist would be their salvation, or their end. The night carried a tension so sharp it cut through the rain. In a smoky bar on the east side, rival bosses gathered in hushed corners, whispers weaving rumors like venom. Michael Carter leaned against the wall, cigarette glowing faintly as his eyes scanned the room. A stranger's glance lingered too long, and his hand drifted toward his pistol, instinct louder than reason. Anthony Marino entered, his presence swallowing the room. He said, "Fear is spreading, but fear can be power if we shape it." The words hung heavy, echoed by the clinking of glasses and muffled laughter. Yet beneath the bravado, every man knew the empire was splitting, threads of loyalty fraying faster than they could be stitched. The meeting room was lined with velvet curtains and gold trim, but the luxury only sharpened the knives hidden beneath. Dominic Rossi puffed on his cigar, grinning with venom as he said, "The streets are choosing sides, and they're not choosing you, Anthony." Rage flared in Anthony's eyes, his hand slamming the table. Michael's stare cut across the room, watching every gesture, sensing betrayal before it could breathe. Soldiers at the walls shifted uneasily, loyalty dripping from them like sweat in the heat of war. The empire was no longer one voice, it was a chorus of suspicion, every note discordant and deadly. A warehouse deal turned sour under the glow of flickering bulbs. Crates of weapons stood like silent witnesses as rival gunmen stormed in, their rifles raised. Anthony shouted, "Hold the line." Bullets tore the silence, steel ringing and blood splattering across cold concrete. Michael ducked behind a crate, firing back with precision, his heart thundering like the storm outside. Shadows danced as men fell, their cries drowned by gunfire. The deal was broken, alliances shattered, and the warehouse floor became a graveyard of promises. As smoke thickened, Anthony's voice roared, "We're not done. This war has only started." Later, the rain washed the streets red, pooling around the wheels of black sedans parked in alleys. Michael leaned against the hood, his face hardened by the night's carnage. He whispered, "Every war leaves ghosts, and they never stop haunting." Anthony emerged from the shadows, his suit torn, blood smeared across his sleeve, but his eyes burned with fury. He said, "They want to break us, but we'll crush them before dawn." Their words lingered under neon signs flickering in the storm, while unseen figures moved in rooftops above, listening, waiting, hungering for the perfect moment to strike. Inside a candlelit chapel, Isabella Marino knelt in silence, her rosary clutched tight, tears tracing her cheeks. Her voice quivered, "God, save them before they destroy themselves." Thunder rattled stained glass, the colors bleeding across the pews. Michael stepped inside, his footsteps echoing hollowly. He whispered, "Prayers won't stop bullets, Isabella." She turned, grief burning into defiance. "Then maybe they'll save your soul," she said. The silence between them was heavier than gunfire. Outside, the city roared with violence, but inside the chapel, the battle was for hearts already breaking. The mansion's study was thick with smoke, bookshelves towering like silent judges. Anthony Marino paced, veins pulsing in his neck. He said, "Someone's feeding our enemies. We bleed from the inside." Michael Carter leaned in, cigarette dangling, his voice low. "Paranoia is poison, Anthony, but it may be the only cure left." Anthony slammed a glass against the table, shards scattering like broken truss. Shadows danced from the fireplace, their flames restless as the men inside. Dominic Rossi sat silent, his grin too controlled, his eyes too calm. Every corner whispered betrayal, but the truth remained cloaked, waiting to strike. In the back of a limousine, rain streaked down tinted glass as Anthony stared into the blur of neon lights. He whispered, "The city's veins are turning against me." Michael Carter's gaze flicked toward him, voice sharp. "You're not paranoid if the knives are real." The chauffeur's eyes caught Anthony's in the mirror, a flicker too long, too deliberate. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the hum of tires against slick streets. Anthony reached for his pistol, hidden beneath his coat, doubt gnawing at every thought. Loyalty had become a currency, spent faster than blood could replace. The warehouse hummed with the metallic echo of machinery. Soldiers checked weapons under buzzing lights, but unease thickened the air. Dominic Rossi raised his cigar, eyes cold. "Half the city is against us because someone's talking." Michael scanned faces, shadows twitching at the edges of light. Anthony shouted, "Find the traitor or the streets drown in fire." Silence dropped heavy. Every soldier suddenly stranger, every glance a weapon. Somewhere inside that room sat Betrayal, dressed in loyalty, smiling, waiting for the perfect cut. The Empire trembled, not from enemies outside, but from the rot festering within its bones. In a rain-soaked alley, Michael Carter crouched, examining a blood-stained envelope left beneath a trash can. Inside, coded accounts linked cartel money to someone within their circle. His breath hissed, words heavy. "The betrayal runs deeper than we feared." Anthony's eyes burned as he snatched the papers. "Show me the face that dares spit on my blood." Neon signs flickered overhead, casting violent hues of red and green across wet brick. For the first time, doubt cracked Anthony's command. Each page was proof that the Empire's collapse was not a war, it was an execution planned from within. The church bells tolled midnight as Isabella Marino entered the dim confessional booth, her rosary clutched tightly. Her whisper trembled, "Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned against blood." On the other side, silence lingered too long, the priest's shadow unmoving. She wept, words spilling like wounds. "They trust me, but I carry their secrets to those who would burn them." Her hands shook as thunder cracked, rattling the stained glass. The silence from the booth grew heavier, as if judgment itself held its breath. In that sacred cage, betrayal unveiled its first face, cloaked in faith and sorrow. The storm howled outside the abandoned villa, lightning casting jagged scars across its crumbling walls. Inside, Michael Carter sifted through coded ledgers, sweat dripping onto faded ink. He whispered, This isn't cartel money. It's blood bought by family hands. Anthony Marino's voice trembled with fury. You're saying one of ours has been bleeding us dry? The air thickened as pages revealed names tied to betrayal, transactions pointing back into the Marino bloodline. Silence devoured the room, each man realizing their war was not against strangers, but against someone they had once sworn to protect. The weight of the revelation pressed heavier than the storm outside. Anthony slammed the ledger shut, his breath ragged as his fists shook. He said, "Only family had access to these accounts. Which one of them turned traitor?" Michael's eyes darkened, voice low. "The betrayal isn't from the streets, it's from your blood." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, shifting on their heels, the storm rattling glass like a drumbeat of doom. For the first time, Anthony's confidence faltered, his voice cracking as he muttered, "No, not my own." But the evidence screamed louder than his denial. A ghost of trust died in that moment, leaving only suspicion to inherit the empire. Later, in the candlelit chapel, Anthony confronted Isabella Marino, his voice breaking the sacred stillness. "Tell me it isn't you," he pleaded, eyes wild with grief. Isabella's tears fell, but her silence weighed heavier than denial. She whispered finally, "I carried secrets for survival, but those secrets chained us to the fire." Her confession cracked the air like thunder, every word a dagger. Michael stepped from the shadows, face hardened. "She's the link, the rot we searched for lives in her blood." Isabella's sobs filled the chapel, but her resolve remained cold. The betrayal was no longer rumor, it had a name. Anthony's rage erupted, his voice echoing off stone walls. "You betrayed us, Isabella. You handed our empire to vultures." Isabella lifted her tear-streaked face, defiance glinting in her eyes. "I gave them nothing they didn't already take. This empire was poisoned long before me." Michael stepped forward, his gun heavy at his side, caught between justice and mercy. Thunder rattled the chapel as loyalty, blood, and betrayal bled into one storm. Anthony raised his hand, torn between striking her down or shielding her as his sister. The empire trembled, not from outside enemies, but from the fracture of its own foundation. The truth detonated through Anthony like a bullet. Isabella's confession had carved open the heart of the empire, and there was no mending it. He staggered back, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Blood betrayed blood. It ends with us." Michael's eyes narrowed as he muttered, "Then we finish this before the world swallows us whole." Isabella's tears glistened, but her chin lifted with the strength born of sacrifice. Outside, lightning shattered the night sky, the storm echoing the collapse of a dynasty. The Marino family's throne was no longer gilded with power, it was drowning in betrayal. The storm eased as dawn bled faint light across the Marino estate, its halls echoing with silence, broken only by the weight of betrayal. Anthony Marino stood in the grand hall, pistol clenched, his eyes hollow but burning. He muttered, "This house was built on loyalty, and now it crumbles on lies." Michael Carter stepped forward, voice sharp as a blade. "The time for questions is over. Tonight we face the King of Shadows." Isabella, pale with grief, whispered, "Blood cannot be washed clean with blood." Her plea vanished into the cavernous silence. The final stage was set, and each heart carried the certainty that not all would survive. A convoy of black sedans cut through misty hills, their engines growling like predators. Inside the lead car, Anthony stared at the approaching estate, his jaw locked. He whispered, "This is where it ends." Michael loaded his weapon, calm but deadly. "We burn it down or it buries us." Lightning flickered over the distant mansion, its silhouette like a fortress of greed. Soldiers in silence tightened grips on rifles, the air alive with dread. Isabella clutched her rosary, eyes closed, lips trembling in prayer. The convoy surged forward, carrying them into the jaws of fate, every mile echoing like a heartbeat. The estate's gates loomed, iron teeth biting into the mist. Gunmen waited in the shadows, rifles gleaming. The convoy screeched to a halt, doors flying open as Anthony roared, "Take them down!" Chaos erupted in thunderous gunfire. Michael moved with ruthless precision, bullets sparking against stone. Soldiers fell into pools of rain and blood, their cries lost to the storm. Isabella shielded herself behind a car, rosary slipping from trembling fingers. Explosions lit the sky as grenades tore through walls, fire spreading like judgment. The gates fell, and through the carnage, Anthony's voice rose above the storm. "This is our reckoning." Inside the estate, corridors burned with gunfire, flames crawling across velvet curtains. Anthony stormed forward, boots splashing blood across marble. He growled, "Face me, coward!" Shadows shifted until Dominic Rossi emerged, calm amidst chaos, cigar glowing faintly. His voice dripped venom. "I was never your ally, Anthony. I was the knife in your ribs all along." Michael's gun leveled instantly, but Dominic's soldiers poured from the darkness. Bullets screamed, glass shattered, chandeliers crashed to the floor. Betrayal stood unmasked, its grin smoking like a slow fuse. The Empire's Kingpin had revealed himself, and only blood could crown the victor. The Grand Hall became a battlefield of destiny. Flames licked gilded walls, smoke choking the air. Anthony and Dominic faced each other at last, eyes locked, hatred ancient and raw. Dominic sneered, "I built this empire, and I'll bury it with you." Anthony roared, lunging, their gunfire colliding like thunder. Michael fought off soldiers at the edges, his bullets carving a path through chaos. Isabella screamed as fire rained glass around her, her prayers drowned by violence. Blood splattered marble, echoes of betrayal ringing louder than the storm outside. The Empire's soul balanced on a trigger, the final crown waiting to fall. The mansion's flames dimmed into smoking ruins as dawn crept over the hills. Anthony Marino stood amid the wreckage, chest heaving, revolver slipping from his hand. His eyes burned with both triumph and despair. Michael Carter approached slowly, weapon lowered, face carved in exhaustion. He muttered, "The Empire is dust, Anthony. Nothing remains but ashes." Anthony whispered, "Ashes can still burn." The silence stretched, broken only by collapsing beams. Isabella Marino emerged from the shadows, her dress torn, eyes hollow yet alive. Her trembling voice carried, "Blood was the price, but what have we bought?" The survivors gathered in silence near the shattered gates. Michael Carter leaned against a scorched car, cigarette trembling between his fingers. He said, "We've torn down kings, but the crown still calls vultures." Anthony stared at the horizon, jaw clenched, the weight of choices pressing into his bones. Isabella clasped her rosary, whispering a prayer no one could hear. For a fleeting moment, the war seemed over, but its echoes haunted the air. The city below stirred with life, unaware of the ghosts rising from this battlefield. Anthony wandered alone into the charred Grand Hall, the silence of ruin deafening. He ran his hand across cracked marble, where blood still stained the floor. His voice broke, "This empire cost everything, and still it devoured us." The flicker of dying flames painted his face with shadows, grief etched deeper than scars. Michael appeared in the doorway, words heavy. "Redemption isn't found in fire, Anthony. It's in what you choose next." Anthony's gaze lingered on the broken throne, his silence speaking louder than bullets ever had. At the edge of the ruined estate, Isabella Marino watched the sunrise break over the horizon. Her tears shimmered as she whispered, "The world moves on, but our souls are chained here forever." Michael placed a hand on her shoulder, quiet but grounding. He muttered, "Chains can break if you have the strength to cut them." Anthony stood apart, staring into the distance, haunted by visions only he could see. For him, dawn brought no peace, only the weight of survival. The storm had ended, but its scars would bleed for eternity. Night fell again as Anthony walked alone down an empty road, shadows stretching long beneath flickering street lamps. His face was carved hollow, his eyes void. A phone rang faintly in the distance, echoing across the silence. He paused, breath sharp, as if fate itself whispered his name. Michael's words haunted him. "Redemption isn't found in fire." Isabella's prayer lingered. forgive them. He tightened his coat, disappearing into the night as the phone kept ringing. The war had ended, but its cost would never leave him. The final crown lay shattered, and only ghosts remained to wear it.